Godzilla is one of, or maybe the most, famous monsters in Hollywood. He's also one of my favorites. Today I'm trying to recreate an epic shot inspired by the official artworks from the Godzilla movies. Will mine even come close to the movie version? Let's find out. I'm collecting some concept artworks from the official movies and spending time analyzing it to understand what is needed. These concept artworks are really useful, so I recommend always working with some kind of reference. Let's start by placing a camera with a similar angle and height. I'm creating some rough blockouts of the main buildings by extruding and scaling cubes. I place them to get a rough idea of how things are looking. I add a large plane as the ground and use a particle system set to hair to scatter many cubes across it. I adjust the randomness of the rotation and scale. Then I duplicate them and change the scale to create a skyscraper look. I place these at a distance to add some contrast. So, looking at that landscape of cubes, I have a good block out, but that's it. So now I look for models that fit what I need. I found some good free 3D models and replaced the block out with them. I use a low poly building pack for the scattered buildings on the ground. With the main buildings in place, the environment already looks much better. For the background skyscrapers, I use a 3D scan of Manhattan. From the camera's perspective, you can tell the difference, so it doesn't matter. I add some extra skyscrapers in the middle of the scene to make the transition smoother and give the scene more visual interest. Great! Now that we have Moscow in place, it's time to destroy it. But for that to happen, we need someone. Godzilla is the most important part of the scene, so I need a really good model of him. You can find hundreds of Godzilla models and even some good free ones. For this, I use this model. It is one of the best Godzilla models available for the public. Now that I have Godzilla, it's time to animate him. Before starting, I look at some movie scenes where he roars to get some reference. Little fun fact, Godzilla is actually the longest running film franchise in history. Godzilla first saw the light of day in 1954. Since then we have gotten 38 Godzilla movies. One of the most successful films in 2014 was Godzilla, which also marked the start of the Monsterverse. It is really fun animating something that big. I start by setting the main poses. He moves slightly down and back, then up again as he begins to roar. I also want his tail to move from in front of the Kremlin to slowly behind him. I spent some time on the head because he usually moves it a lot during roaring. And I wanted to feel as close as possible to the movie version. After some time animating, it looks right, so I port him into the environment and place him so he stands correctly with his tail movement. Let's take a look at the project so far. Overall, it looks pretty good, but we're not done yet. The most important part of any 3D environment is lighting. You can check out my last video about lighting where I explain everything in much more detail. I add light points all over the city to make it look like fire. I also add a noise modifier to the lights so you can see a slow flickering effect. I want to highlight Godzilla more, so I add a spotlight with a strong intensity and a wide radius. I place it so it lights his side, creating nice contrast. I give the light a warm tone. And great! One of the last steps in Blender is adding a large amount of depth. I add 3 volumes in total. First, I place a large cube over the entire environment with a low density volume scatter. Next, I add another small cube placed around knee height on Godzilla, so it looks more dense at the ground level. The last one is a large sphere placed directly around Godzilla. This makes him feel slightly more distant and larger at the same time. That's it for Blender. Now I hit the render button and hope for the best. The heavy effects like fire and smoke are handled in Nuke because creating them in Blender would take significantly more render time. I start by combining all the render passes like glossy, albedo and others. Then I adjust the smoke layer to give it a slightly more red tone. After that, I fine-tune specific parts using cryptomats. For example, I lift the black point on Godzilla a bit to improve the sense of depth. And I also add depth of field using a Z defocus node. With the base compositing in place, I move on to the more important effects. I add breath coming out of his mouth, followed by burning buildings and large smoke plumes on the right side where his tail is. Then I combine other burning buildings with the one from Blender and add additional smoke plume on the left side. To build up the atmosphere, I add some smoke assets and duplicate it multiple times across the scene, cutting out certain parts, again using cryptomats. I also introduce some heat distortion in front of the camera to make the scene feel a bit more realistic. Since there is fire and the scene is set in Moscow, I add sparks and slow moving through the scene to create some motion. For the background, I blend two HDRIs to get the final sky. As a final step, I add camera effects like rain, lens flares, motion blur, glow and more. These are essential for achieving a realistic result. The difference before and after compositing is clearly visible. This is before and this is after compositing. It's just so cool to look at the difference. The final step is adding some color grading and sound design. After that, it's done! So tell me, does this come close to the Godzilla movies? So, what do you think? Is it good enough? Let me know in the comments and leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more stuff like this. See you next time!